Okay, Andy, so we've got the second game in the box set up, Capri. Obviously, we chatted at the first game, Santamora, a little bit about the combat system, the glory system, etc., which are replicated through all the games. But perhaps you can give us a bit of an overview of Capri, what it's all about, and maybe we can talk a little bit about the extra elements in here, like the weather, and maybe you can talk us through the event cards and how they work, the event table, how that impacts on each game in the series.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Okay, here we go. So this is the island of Capri in the Bay of Naples.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very representative of the map. There's some land here representing Naples and a little bit of land here representing Sorrento.
Yeah.
Now this is 1808. In the Maida game in 1806, as part of the Maida landings, Sir Sidney Smith, who's actually in the Bonaparte and Egypt game, Sir Sidney Smith was supporting the Maida landings in 1806. It was evident that the Navy weren't really needed once they had dropped the troops off. So he sailed up the coast and captured Capri in 1806. And it was then held for 2 years by the British right in the Bay of Naples. So King Murat in Naples could look out of his window and see the British on the island of Capri, which obviously he wasn't very happy about. So by 1808, he decided that they was going to take it back. So they assembled a force under Lamarck, about 3,000-ish, sources vary slightly, but about 3,000-ish French troops, French and Neapolitan troops, and they invaded from Sorrento and from Naples. They effectively went across the bay, landed on the island, to recapture the island. The island was garrisoned by Hudson Lowe, who's in the Santamora game as well. And Hudson Lowe is obviously, most people who know anything about Napoleonics will know that he ends up as the jailer of Napoleon on St. Helena. He is the chap that goes to St. Helena with Napoleon to make sure he doesn't escape.
Okay.
But he's actually the commander of the island. He's the officer of the Corsican Rangers, which are in this game. He's in Capri town to start with some Corsican Rangers and some artillery, and scattered around the island is a garrison, and he's got some Maltese regiment and some Corsican Rangers. Okay. And it's quite a small garrison, about 800 or so men. It's about 800 or so Maltese regiment and about 600 to 800 Corsican Rangers.
Okay.
So they're heavily outnumbered by the French, and the French also have the ability to get more troops and more reinforcements. There's more stuff available to them. So this is what the game's representing, is the French attack. Weather played a massive part in this, because we're in the Bay of Naples at the time of year when this happened. Over sort of a week to 10-day period, the sea was dead calm most of the time. And when it was calm, the British frigates that were in the area couldn't really operate against the French, because the French were in gunboats mainly, or paddled gunboats, and they had lots and lots of them, sort of 50 plus of these oar-powered gunboats. And the British only had a handful of frigates in the area. So every time it went dead calm, the British had to withdraw, and the French were able to ferry their troops across the island quite easily. But as soon as the wind picked up, so the frigates could manoeuvre, then the gunboats became very vulnerable to the British frigates, because the frigates could move about and get a better angle. And so as soon as the wind picks up, the British frigates are free to leave Ponza, which is where there's another small island where there was the king of the two Sicilies still had was in control of Ponza, and the British had a naval base on there. So the British got a couple of frigates with some Sicilian gunboats, and the French have got lots of gunboats, and they've got a single frigate. The chart here, this is the weather chart. Now, the weather will change with events. I'll describe how events work in a moment. But the weather will go between calm and windy. When it's windy, everybody can move. When it's calm, the British frigates must go back to Ponza. The French frigate can keep operating because it's not in any danger of being attacked, even though it's dead calm, so it's going slow, and they're going to have to use oars or be towed by their boats. But they can use their frigate, whereas the British frigates are too vulnerable. There was 2 storms during the invasion, and the storms were really bad, and caused all the boats to have to go back to base. So when the two storms occur, all ships on all sides will have to go back to their bases. Any ships that are in one spaces when the storm occurs will be lost.
Right.
So if you've got a French invasion force trying to land and they're in a one space and then a storm occurs through an event, you're going to lose all those boats and all the troops that are on the boats. In this game, each gunboat, so there's 4 gunboats here, there's sort of 1 symbols and 2 symbols and so on, so you can change the amount of boats about in any space, but each gunboat can carry 1 element, and an element is either an infantryman or an artillery.
Okay.
They can carry any amount of commanders because it's just a single person.
Yeah.
So 4 gunboats can only carry 4 troops.
Right.
The frigate can also carry 1. So you might put your artillery on, say, the frigate, you've got 4 infantry there, it leaves 6 behind in Naples still. You don't want to take a commander, but off you go to kind of invade whichever way you want to go. You're going to have to go, you're going to have to land those troops, you're going to have to come back, pick up more troops, get back, land them again, which is the problem that the French had. You haven't got enough boats to get everyone across in the first go.
Okay.
So you've got 10 French infantry at Sorrento with only 4 gunboats. You've got 10 infantry at Naples and an artillery with only 4 gunboats and a frigate. The British have only got frigates and gunboats. They've got no troops to carry. All their troops are already on the island.
Yep.
Again, the events will allow the French to gain reinforcements, and there's a reinforcement pool that they can choose from. So when they get reinforcements, they can choose to have more gunboats, they could choose more troops, or they could choose more artillery, but they only have a certain amount, and once that's chosen, then they have to choose from the rest. So you could end up with all the boats over there to help you bring more troops across. The island itself, Hudson Lowe knew he was effectively going to lose. He's going to be swamped. His policy was to hold on as long as possible to get good surrender terms. And in the actual campaign, he managed to persuade the French that a huge relief force was coming from Sicily and was due to land at any moment. And so the French allowed him to surrender with full honours, and all the British troops, when they surrendered, were allowed to leave the island with all their weapons and go back to Sicily, rather than being interned and captured. So the kind of instant win conditions for the British are to, when the game ends, for Hudson Lowe to be in a strong position, meaning that he's managed to negotiate good surrender terms, and he would get that by having more victory points. Each of the stronghold spaces on the map have victory points. Whoever's got the most victory points when the game ends through the event would have negotiated the best surrender terms effectively.
Okay.
The British can win instantly, though, if they can destroy, I think it's 10 French gunboats. And the French have got the potential to have 16 gunboats. They've got 8 in reinforcements, and they start with 8. But if the British can either capture or sink 10 of them, or if the storms do it as well, then that's an instant win to the British, because that's going to stop the invasion, because the French can't get onto the island anymore.
Sure.
The French can instantly win if they can take Capri and Capri town. So if they can take both of those 2 places and hold both of those 2 places, then they instantly win.
Right.
Otherwise, when the game ends, whoever's got the most victory points, and you gain victory points. So Capri here, it's worth 3 victory points to the French. It's worth 4 victory points to the British. And so all the time the British hold it, they'll have 4 victory points.
Sure.
But you only get victory points for places that you are physically occupying. So say, for example, if the British choose to leave Capri and come over to the next space here, Capri, they would lose those 4 victory points. The French wouldn't gain them because the space is now empty. The French would have to be in it to gain it. So they'd lose those 4, but they would have gained those 2. So they get a net loss of 2. So what this means is, if the British just concentrate all their forces in one place, like Capri town, they'll lose all of their victory points. Capri town's worth 6, but they only have 6 victory points, and the French can just spread out and take all the victory points and then wait to the end of the game. So then the onus would be on the British to counterattack to get some of those victory points back. So just hunkering down in Capri town won't win you the game. You have to slow down the French when they're attacking. You have to keep on counterattacking to get places back, to make it difficult for the French, and you've got to try and cut off the French as they're crossing the sea to land. Now, we covered how things move in the video on Santa Mora with the space values and the way combat works. Again, it's the same as Santa Mora. It's always the same system. Again, this is a 3 dice game, not a 4 dice game.
Okay.
So the other thing really to talk about is the way the weather changes and the events. So on the event table here, at the start of the game, you would roll 1 die, and you get a number between 1 and 6, and whatever that number is, that would be the event that would occur. So some of the events might change the wind, some of them might cause reinforcements to be placed, some of them might bring in extra troops, some of them will say to re-roll with an extra dice. So if the event has got an R beside it, it's a repeatable event and can happen any number of times. If there's no R beside it, so if the first time you rolled a 3, it'd be the French gain 2 reinforcements. So the French player could choose, perhaps they say, I'm going to take 2 gunboats early on, and they can place them either in Sorrento or Naples. And then the wind would change to calm, which would force all the British frigates to stay in Ponza, gives the French free movement.
Okay.
But then that is then covered over. So if a 3 is rolled again, we get a different event. It would be wind would become windy, changing the wind. And it would also say, if you'd rolled that with 1d6, which we had, to re-roll for an event with 2d6. So you place this on the side to remind yourself. You roll 2 dice for the next event. It's 9. You look at 9, and this is remove one of the Maltese infantry due to desertion. A lot of the Maltese, they wanted to desert. That's one of the reasons they were put on the island. When they was in Malta, they kept on deserting. They put them on Sicily, and they had a lot of troubles with them deserting. So they were sent to Capri because they knew they couldn't desert. But they did go over to the French side. A lot of them surrendered quite quickly to the French. So that's what this event is representing. And this is repeatable, so this can continually happen. So if the Allied player leaves lots of Maltese regiments holding places, when one is removed through desertion, that the Allied player has to choose which one do I want to take, and you'd lose the corresponding victory points.
Sure.
So that's an attrition thing. So once you're up to 2 dice, you'd roll until one of the events tells you to roll 3 dice, in which case you'd put the third thing on. So some of these events might get covered over as they've been rolled. So with 3 dice, you might roll a 6 still. So even though you're on 3 dice, event 6 could still occur. Once we get to 10, the first event 10 will occur with a second event tile. If you get a 10, so if you roll 3 dice and you roll a 10, which is the most likely number for you to roll with 3 dice, saying that I've rolled a 12, there you go. If you roll a 10, the game ends.
Right.
So nobody knows when the game's going to end. Nobody knows which turn the game's going to end. And so when you're manoeuvring, counter-attacking to try and keep you're having more victory points than your opponent, you might have to hold on to it for another 2 or 3 turns. It might only be 1 turn.
Yep.
So that puts the kind of the stress on making decisions and deciding when to use your glory to make things happen, not knowing when the game's going to end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay. Is there anything else on the board that you have seen that you're not sure what it is?
I've seen the fortresses add to the defence of the defenders, do they?
Yeah. So in Capri, there was lots of sort of small churches and strongholds, and what actually happened in the end, Hudson Lowe sort of fortified Capri town and sort of held out in the town. So the Allies, the British, had most of this side of the island, and the French had come in and they had most of this side of the island at the end of the campaign. But a lot of these buildings were really heavily fought over. So a bit like Santa Mora and Capri, there are some events that will introduce fortifications.
Right.
So the Allied player can get like 1 strength point of fortification where they could place somewhere. So this is worth 2. If you put that in there, it's now worth 3. So whatever troops are in there, so that is 1 Maltese, would actually count as 4, because he's got 4 points of fortification if he's fighting, which is called the siege stab. It's not really a siege, but it's kind of like the assault round of the siege. So you can use fortifications to try and fortify places to hold on to them for longer.
Okay.
If you're forced out, the fortification stays there. So if the French capture that space, that's still fortified, and so the French would then gain the benefit if they were attacked in a counter attack.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. The only one other thing, there are 0 spaces in here. There were a few. It's kind of very mountainous at this end and this end, and there's a bit of a valley goes in between. And there was no really good roads or anything. There was a couple of kind of like goat paths that enabled you to go from one side of the island to the other and to get around. And the French discovered some of these during the invasion.
Right.
So to start off with, a lot of these 0 spaces, if they're in them, they're stuck. But there is an event, I think it's event 13, that allows for the discovery of these kind of secret paths. So if the French are in a 0 space or a 1 space, and the event is rolled, they could move out. So going into a 0 space may mean you're stuck there. So you could retreat into a 0 space.
Yep.
You might be stuck there for a few turns, but if the event comes up, you can get out.
Right.
Or you might want to land troops into a 0 space.
Yep.
And then just leave them there, waiting for
an opportunity,
an event to allow them to pop out. So there's a bit of gameplay there as well.
Interesting.
Because your opponent, the British, can't get out on those paths, only the French. So if you put French troops into the 0 spaces, the British can't go in there and get them out. Right. But they are on the land, so they're safe from storms.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Great. Well, that's a really useful overview of Capri and the differences between the 2 games. Obviously, these all come in the 1 box set. So have you got many of these left to sell? I assume you've had a big uptake on this game since launch.
Yeah, it's been really good. Both games have been very popular with this and Maida. We've done a print run where we have got games left. You know, we printed more than just the ones that were backed, so we have got copies left. It is our intention to keep all of our games in print though. Okay. So if the first print run sells out, which hopefully it will, and there is a demand, we will certainly reprint it. So we are hoping that this is a game that people will always be able to get, at least going forward as long as we can.
Are they going to get that direct from your website? Any distributors in the UK as well? Yeah.
So at the moment, you can buy them direct from our website, Form Square Games. You can get them from Second Chance Games in the UK. They stock all of our games. In Germany, Gamers HQ are now stocking them, and hopefully very soon Snafu Games in Spain will be stocking them. They're in talks with us at the moment about doing that.
Great.
We're in the process of getting a distribution deal in the UK to have the games distributed amongst kind of local game stores. So hopefully sort of hobby shops and game shops around the UK. It's probably going to be a few months, 3-6 months before they start appearing into game shops, but eventually you might be able to buy them in shops. And we are in talks as well at the moment of getting a US distributor. So hopefully we'll be able to get them into places like Noble Knight and retailers in America, but that may not be for 3 or 4 months from now. So I mean, we're in May, so towards the end of 2025 we're hoping to have them in retail in America as well.
Watch this space. All good stuff.
Yeah,
brilliant. Thank you very much, Andy. Appreciate that.
Cheers. Thank you.